Alright, time for another draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com also. Said graph physics, right? Anyway, video presentation. So one of the cranks, the trolls, that's all they really are, Michael Fowell, has made some idiotic video where, he just can't understand anything about physics, frankly. And certainly can't listen to an argument and pay attention to what's actually drawn and stated. So anyway, just a really stupid video. It's called Draft Science Moving the Goalposts Again and Again. So I haven't changed anything, okay? But I'm making the same argument, okay? There's no such thing in reality as 1/2 mv squared. No experiment demonstrates it to exist. It's absolute nonsense. And the only thing I have changed over these years is the fact that, the absolute facts of what we've learned, that springs collect energy really well. They release it. That is, when they're not stuck or connected to an object, they release it really poorly. Okay, and that all explosions essentially have the same liability, that the faster the object leaves, the faster the propellant's also leaving. And that means that you're going to lose more and more of your momentum the faster the propellant is moving when the object leaves contact. So anyway, these are interesting facts. He doesn't like facts. So apparently that's all this is about, because the facts demonstrate why their crooked and rigged experiments don't get correct results, and that's why they don't want to hear about the facts, because they want to cheat. It's that simple. So I'll play the introduction and I'll just draw it and just explain again what was in the video, which is plainly seeable in the drawing. I'm not in any way denying the law of the lever. I'm not changing any predictions for the law of the lever, relationships, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1 distances. None of that has changed. I'm just pointing out that it's just an absolute fact that you can change how fast something's going to move by moving it on a lever. That's what levers do. They convert the MV. And they don't just convert it in 1 to 2 relationships or 1 to 3 relationships. They change it in 1.1 to 3.7 ways. Alright, anyway. So the theory of the experiment is sort of interesting. Now you'd argue that... So the point of me making this video was to just point out that if you use the law of the lever, you can be assured that the lever moves the same speed. So you've eliminated any irregularity in the results based on how much energy the lever will consume, because it will consume exactly the same amount of energy. And so I was just pointing out how other people want to do these experiments and test velocity. The simple way to do it is just to put a flag on the lever, okay, and measure the speed of the lever. Because as long as you have the masses in the correct 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 relationship, the lever should, where you've reduced the mass by the same proportion you've increased the distance from the fulcrum, you'll have the same motion in the lever itself. That you pull this back to a certain set distance, that this energy is the same no matter what you do. Okay, you're going to produce the energy from the spring. So the argument simply is that the energy has to go into the motion of the objects. One of the objects is the lever, and the other object is the mass you've put on it. And all of the force, which in this case we could just say is weight, so we'll just do that. Yeah, we'll just illustrate it that way, is going to move the lever and whatever mass you put on it. So I could do the experiment and I could know that a certain distance, I pull this back and I have a stop. And so there's always the same compression. Let's just say it's 9 pounds. Okay, it's exactly how much a spring would be compressed if I put 9 pounds on it. So I can argue it has 9 pounds of pressure. Okay, I'm going to say I have a stop here. Okay, so it's going to pull back to a stop and it's going to hit a stop. Well, I can sort of know that if I pull the lever back and I do the experiment, the lever is going to be the only thing moving. I'm going to get most of the energy from the spring is going to go into moving the lever, and the lever is going to hit the stop with what? 9 pounds. That's what it's going to hit it with. And the more mass I put on the lever, so if I start loading the lever up with masses, then the lever isn't going to move the same speed, and it's not going to hit the stop with the same 9 pounds. Now it'll only be a 1 pound or a half pound or a tenth of a pound, depending on how much weight I put on the lever. Duh. And we're talking about a horizontal lever, so gravity doesn't have anything to do with it. Alright, so that's where we are, sort of. So back to the video. Hit the button. But the catch is...
So you do understand that the energy is coming from the spring.
So, I mean, this is just, you're just saying, oh yeah, why don't you just waste everybody's time with nonsense, right? So I've made no video where I'm saying energy comes from anything other than objects where you've stored it in some way or something else. So there's no argument about this. Just a silly, fucking idiotic thing to say. But wait, yeah, like I said, just you're wasting everybody's time, even your little supporters.
That's what's powering the system.
The faster the whole lever moves, that means the more you have to subtract for the lever. Okay.
Right, why are you talking about the faster the lever moves?
Because depending on where I put the mass, I'll change how fast the lever moves. So we'll go back to the drawing. I mean, it's sort of a duh statement, but it's just a fact. Okay, so if I put the mass here, okay, and so it's the same mass, I'm just going to slide it across this lever. Now these are experiments. I could argue that physics should have done them, right? I shouldn't have to talk about them. They should already be done. So we should know already exactly how it proportionally changes depending on where I put this mass. So if I put it right here, right, and then we know that twice the distance, right, so this is a very small distance, but we know that twice the distance is going to be twice the velocity, right? So we know right here it's going to be twice the velocity that it was here. So it's one velocity here. We know it's going to be twice the velocity here. 3 times the distance is going to be 3 velocity, right? It's the same mass. Do you have some other theory? If the lever is free to move. So the argument is now the heavier the mass gets, the greater percentage of the energy it's absorbing from the system. What else could possibly happen except you're going to increase the velocity, but there's a point, okay, where you're going to get a maximum speed, and that's it. So you could put it in very close. The lever has to move faster the closer in it is. Do you get that part? To go 50 miles an hour, let's say, the object to go 50 miles an hour, it can't go 50 miles an hour here, here, no matter where I put it. Because the lever itself has to move a different speed for it to go 50 miles an hour. So if I wanted to get a peak velocity, there's a place on the lever where the amount the lever uses and the amount the object gets, okay, are in perfect balance, in the sense that you've minimized the motion of the lever and you've maximized the motion of the mass. So there is a point somewhere on this lever where you're going to get a peak velocity. That was the argument. So it wasn't an argument against the law of the lever. I'm still clearly saying that you put a 2 mass 1 distance and a 1 mass 2 distances, those two things are the same energy and the same momentum, and those two things will be pushed by a lever, as Brozo's experiment demonstrated. And mine on my porch. Okay. So back to the video.
The whole argument you've had is that the lever will move at the same speed when
only when the masses are in those relationships of 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, where you've reduced the mass proportional to the distance. So 1/3 the mass at 3 units of distance, 1/2 the mass at 2 units of distance. That's the law of the lever.
masses are placed individually at the respectively.
I mean, the whole point of the video is to illustrate that a way of testing the velocity is to just see if the lever moves the same speed when you have the one mass, 2 units of distance. Well, then you know it's going twice the velocity. It can't do anything other than be going twice the velocity.
It's going to consume some amount of the energy. So the faster the whole lever moves, the more energy it's using.
So the lever has to move faster if it's pushing inside. So very short distance from the fulcrum, the lever has to move very fast to push it 10 miles an hour. But if I want to go 10 miles an hour, I put the mass out further, I can go 10 miles an hour with the lever moving very slowly, relatively comparison. So the lever's taking less energy from the system and more energy is going into the object. Like I said, there's a peak somewhere. Like I said, it'd be nice if they have tested any of this, but they haven't. Nobody's done the simple test of just taking a mass and moving it for incrementally, a centimeter or an inch at a time, further and further out on the lever to see what velocities you get.
But again, why are you arguing that now?
I'm not making any argument. I was just pointing out how this is how levers work, and understanding how they work means that if you're going to test something on a lever, it's really good to be paying attention and understanding that maybe all you need to do to move a mass is move it an inch one way or an inch another way and get those two readings before you draw a conclusion that a sensible scientist would test to make sure they have positioned things correctly. And it's a very simple test.
Because the whole premise of using this lever was that, unlike the spring, it's in contact and the spring gives the same energy to the masses and they move the same velocity.
Right, and the point is, again, let's just say it again, it only applies, the lever only moves the same speed when you explicitly obey the law of the lever in terms of reducing mass as you increase distance. And if you don't reduce mass as you increase distance, exact proportions, then the lever will move a different speed, and it either will consume more energy out of the experiment or consume less.
According to you.
Cause the velocity. And the slower it moves, the less energy it's taking.
I mean, let's just understand their theory is that somehow the momentum is destroyed, that the lever can't move twice as fast with a half mass twice the distance. So even though the law of the lever says it does, and it's thousands of years old and been tested over and over again, they claim it doesn't really work, and that all the notion that it does work, Archimedes' science, is garbage, okay, and it doesn't even come close. So instead of twice the velocity, you only get a 0.4 increase in the velocity, only a 0.4 increase. And when you lose 30% of the momentum. Just lost, gone. It's not in the lever, and it's not in the object. The lever has less energy. So if the one mass only moves 0.4 faster, it means the lever moved 0.6 slower. That's the only way it could happen. So the lever has lost, 0.6 out of 2, a third of the momentum. It has a third less momentum in it, and the object itself will leave with a third less momentum. So both objects now have less momentum in them, and there's absolutely no explanation for where it went to.
From the experiment. So these are, you could argue, ideal locations where you obey the law of the lever.
Yes.
So again, where's the change of any goalpost when I just made it clear that the law of the lever applies, and that's what you can expect.
And you want to change those locations?
No, I didn't suggest changing any fucking location. I just suggested it's just an absolute fact that if you want to test the lever for how it functions, this is how you test it. You move the objects further and see if you can get more velocity out of them. Then you'll know how much you've wasted moving the lever. If you don't initially put the mass, the first mass, in the peak location, where it goes the fastest velocity, then obviously you can get the 2 mass to go faster by putting it in the wrong location, because there's energy you haven't utilized because you wasted it not maximizing the speed of the lever. That is, having the lever move the least amount of speed and have the object move the fastest possible. There's a position on the lever that does that. Just a fact.
Just now, because it's not going to come out your way.
So there's no argument about this. I haven't changed anything. It comes out my way, as Brozo's experiment demonstrated, inside the margin of Brozo's errors.
But if you disobey it, you'll get close to the same results, okay? Not the same, because you're losing or gaining energy by how much you've given to the lever.
But again, you're now saying that there's losses of energy to the lever, but
I never changed that, Rick. I said that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when we argued about what Brozo's levers were made out of and how you had to have a light enough lever so it doesn't absorb too much of the energy, blah, 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 blah. So that argument's never changed. The fact that the lever is part of the experiment and it's going to absorb some percentage of the energy is just a fact. And the fact is you change how much it absorbs depending on where you put those masses.
whole argument you've had in using the lever is that it combats that problem.
Exactly, and I never changed anything. I didn't change a single thing. I didn't say don't obey the law of the lever, don't put the mass at one location and then twice the distance. I didn't suggest anything else, you jackass.
But for example, if I did put the one mass at the same location as the two mass, it's still going to...
So I clearly said if I put the one mass where the two mass was, it's still going to go really fast. The lever's going to move much faster. So the lever's only going this fast if the one mass is out here. And if I put the one mass where the two mass was, it's half the mass still. The lever's going to say, well, that's easy to push, so it's going to move faster, okay? But it's not going to be as efficient as putting the one mass further out on the lever, because the lever will absorb more of the energy because the lever has to move twice as fast to give it twice the velocity from the same location. So there's actually be twice as much energy in the lever if you put the one mass where the two mass is.
going to go substantially faster. It's just not going to go twice as fast.
So, substantially faster, is that a figure?
Yeah, it's a figure. Yeah, 80%, whatever, 70, who cares? It's a percentage faster. It's going to go more than 0.4, fucker. Yeah, a lot more than 0.4.
And you're conceding that it's not good.
So, more lies about I changed anything. They didn't change a damn thing. Just dealt with the absolute fact, okay, that the lever, you can change how much energy the lever absorbs in the experiment by moving the location of a mass. It's just an absolute fact. The lever will move at different speed.
And I go twice as fast. So it's got half the inertial mass. It's got half the rotational mass.
So whatever this half is, you're saying it has twice as much inertia. Whatever that is. Because it's a half mass. Nothing changes about how hard it is to push the mass. All that's just changing is that the lever has to move twice as fast to do it. And if the lever's moving twice as fast, that means it's absorbed twice as much of the energy from the experiment. You can't get that energy back. The lever can't give momentum back. Any motion you put into the lever is lost.
Yet it's still not going to achieve twice the velocity because the lever would have to move twice as fast.
Exactly. And so the lever now consumes twice the energy, but it's only 10% of the total energy of the experiment, so it'll still move almost twice as fast, the object, because you only lost 10%, because you're assuming that the lever is 10% of the weight of the masses.
And it won't.
Because the lever itself will be going much faster to be able to release its energy into the object.
So now it's much like the spring argument, isn't it? Now it can't get all its energy in.
So that's not what there's just no argument here beyond the absolute fact that if I put the one mass at the two mass location, it can't go twice the velocity without the lever moving twice as fast. And obviously you can't get any free energy out of the system. So if the lever's moving twice as fast, the object can't move twice as fast.
That's why it doesn't go twice as fast. Nothing to do with the conservation of energy, and that's why.
Oh, it's just ridiculous. It has everything to do with the conservation of momentum.
It doesn't go twice as fast.
Lever will have to go much faster to increase the velocity of the one mass. And if I put it out...
So everything I just said there was absolutely true. It's fact. Totally reasonable. And this idiot, okay, he's just too fucking stupid to understand the simple argument.
A little further, then we get into...
So why would you put it out further?
Because the lever moves slower. The further I put it out, the slower the lever has to move to give it a given velocity. So the fact is that as you tend to push it out further, you can get a higher velocity. But obviously there's a maximum where you're incrementally increasing by so little it won't make any difference. Because you're already getting 99 or 98 or 97% of the energy into the object and only 3% into the lever. And once you hit those kind of proportions, you can't make it any more efficient.
The old argument has again been placing them at the correct points, like the balance lever. Now you want to...
So I didn't say anything about not obeying the law of the lever. I didn't say the law of the lever doesn't apply. I didn't say any such thing. It's just an absolute lie.
Change the goalposts.
Nothing changed at all. I just added value in the sense I just pointed out the reality that these are all things we should have already known. These should be experiments we've already seen because they should have already been done. I mean, sliding a mass further and further out on a lever and seeing how much its velocity changes, I think that's pretty elemental to what science should be. That's how you test something, and then you see if there's a formula that's proportionally defines that maximum speed, where the maximum speed would be. And it's some percentage of the lever's weight, I would argue. So whatever the weight of the lever is, proportional to the weight of the mass you've put on it, it's those proportions that are going to decide where that peak velocity is on the lever.
An argument again about how, it'll be much better. So the further out I put it, ideally speaking, I'm making the lever...
The further out you put it, the more inertial rotation you're going to give it.
Oh, there's no rotation involved. None of that has anything to do with it. It doesn't change anything. Linear momentum is the same as angular momentum. There's no difference. So again, more nonsense about how it changes anything. It's still twice the distance in the same amount of time. That's twice the velocity. So more canard that there's any angular nonsense that changes this experiment at all. There isn't any.
Move less, so I should be able to get even more velocity, a little bit more. So instead of being too close in...
So you say.
Yeah, so I say, that's right. That's my assertion. You're supposed to counter it with some sort of counter argument. So I've made the lever use less energy. The absolute argument is well, where's the energy going to go then? Well, it has to go into the object, right? Because it has to go somewhere. So if it's not in the lever, then it's in the object the lever's pushing. Duh.
You want to be too far out. So if you're going to make an error in your measurement, you want to make sure your error's out, not in, for the light mass.
So again, you want to change the position.
So there's nothing. I'm not changing anything. I'm just saying that shouldn't it be tested? I mean, what's the big deal, right? Especially when you have the Brozo system. It's really easy to set up. You can do the experiment 50 times without even hurting yourself. And just see if there's a difference. So what's the big deal? Oh, I moved it a millimeter over. I tested it at another location just to be sure I was at the right place. Oh, gee, what an offensive thing for a scientist to do is to test something with changing the conditions. oh, we don't want to change the conditions and test anything. That would be outrageous. So nothing was changed here.
To try and work it to your advantage.
So it's just more bullshit. No, try to make the experiment more precise, and that's all that really matters. You want it to be of an where it can't be easily debunked and a criticism can't be easily stated. So if you want to leave it where somebody can just make the criticism, well, you didn't test that your locations were correct. Why bother leaving that door open when you can close it pretty simply?
Which ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, whatever. What ain't gonna happen is we're never gonna see Brozo's celebration video where he gets 0.4 to work. Because 0.4 is idiotic.
Not out for the heavy mass, because that'll change how much energy the lever has to steal.
So again, why now is suddenly the lever?
So this is not a now thing, right? So 3 years ago when we started arguing about this, the weight and mass of the movement of the lever was, when physicist Michael was doing the experiment, the mass of the lever, balancing the lever on both sides. Now in the case of the lever launcher, you don't have to worry about the other side, but you have a constant force. But all of these conversations were always about the fact that there's two things moving in the experiment, the lever and the object you're pushing, and both of them are using the energy produced by the spring. The spring can't move any of it for free.
Stealing energy, when the whole argument of using the lever was it was to combat that problem.
Right, and I pointed that out in the rest of this video you didn't play, where I drew Dispar's experiment right below this and pointed out how he could just put a flag on the end of the lever, and if he uses the law of the lever proportions, the lever should move the same speed in both experiments. So one mass, two distances should move exactly the same. The lever and the masses essentially, and the lever will move exactly the same speed. It will accelerate exactly the same for a one mass going 2 velocity and a one mass going 1 velocity. So clearly I did not argue against the law of the lever, didn't do any such thing. You're just a pathetic liar.
As opposed to just launching off a spring.
So we know just launching off a spring doesn't work. That's why you want to have a fixed amount of energy going into the system, and it's just an absolute fact that the system still has a lever in it. We can't do the idealization of a massless lever. It's not a real experiment we can do, and I'm just saying you do have to understand that if you move the lever quicker, you're going to get less energy out of the experiment. Your masses are going to move with less velocity if the lever's moving faster. Just a fact. You liar. Pathetic liar. Alright, so he's having a back and forth with this other idiot, this John Walker loony. So I just saw that the comments were so fucking wrong. And it's just, that's all they have is lies. Alright, the energy used in compressing the spring still came from the hand, so who cares where who's arguing? It's 9 pounds, right? So we know that when I pull the lever back, I can pull it back really fast, or I can pull it back over a 3-day period, and the spring is going to have the same energy in it, okay? I can't change how much energy is in the spring, because it's going to a location, a compression, an amount of compression or expansion. So, who cares what moved it? Alright, there's no connection between the elastic potential energy inside the spring, so whatever that baby talk is. We know it's has to do with electrons and protons and their association with each other, and that's what you've changed in the object, and it wants to restore itself to its previous condition. Okay, and the mass of the ball. So he says there's no connection. It's idiotic. That's all there is this connection of mv. How much mass going what velocity. That's all you can exchange. So you have 9 pounds of force, and it's either going to be in the lever's movement or it's going to be in the object's motion, and that's it, and the stop. So you're going to hit the stop with a certain speed. So the faster the lever's moving, the more you've wasted whacking the stop. Alright, so he says, "Ah yes, John," to that lie. "I keep overlooking the fact that most of Goofy's contrived experimental ideas to bolster his nonsense." So there's absolutely nothing nonsensical in this simple idea that, well, instead of trying to photograph a pendulum accurately, you could, because he happens to have the stupid timing gate, you could just measure the speed of the lever. So what's nonsensical about that suggestion? Oh, that's right, there's nothing nonsensical. It's perfectly reasonable suggestion. Alright. "Do rely on the hand to input the energy and have no relation to the mass in the demo." I don't even know what that could possibly mean. So he doesn't think quick releases matter. "If it was a weak spring used a very strong one over the same distance, the compression extension of the spring came from the hand indeed." So again, they don't think it's the amount of compression in the spring. It doesn't care about a hand. It doesn't care about what compressed it. Something can compress it very slowly. Something can compress it very quickly. It doesn't matter. It has the same energy in it. Alright, Goofy clutching at straws. So you're the one strawing right here. I mean, it's just so obvious these aren't real arguments of any kind. To try to salvage what he claims to be the truth again and again. So, and again, your counter argument is, I can do a shitty experiment for which I don't show anything technical about how the mechanism actually works, and prove you wrong. Well, no, you can't. Science requires you to have a little bit of credibility, and you have none. Alright, no worries for the surprise video, John. So whatever that means. So we're just waiting on Brozo now. Brozo's done the bold talk that he's going to somehow show that, oh yeah, I can make that 0.4 extra velocity thing happen. You know, I can make the one mass not absorb the momentum. Okay, another one of Goofy's to pretend doesn't exist, whatever that means, because he is not grown up enough to handle a real argument. So again, you've just evaded every argument made in my video, and the argument simply is that, well, it is a fact that you could just incrementally move something on a lever, and it's going to move a different velocity depending on what position on the lever you put it. Oh gee, you're going to counter argue that? Not successfully, you're not. Okay. One where he can't just shout the loudest and claim victory. There's more nonsense about who got shouted at. You know. You know, who can just say, who can use maligning titles? You know, I could call you whatever, child molester Joe. There, is that now? I've done my job. Child molester Fowell. I can just make up a name for you that's, you know, suitable to Goofy or whatever other kind of thing. I mean, you choose your derogatory. I'll choose my derogatory. Okay, anal sniffer Fowell. Anal snifter Fowell. That's his real name. Okay. Alright. Goofy misleads the audience by gaslighting them to believe the trebuchet is a lever. So this is the John Walker guy. So let's draw that just for the fun of it. I mean, it's just such a silly argument not to argue that a trebuchet is a lever. I mean, it's really, 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 really fucking silly. It's a fucking stick. You know, how can you miss the lever part, right? I mean, I shouldn't. All right, I should assume that you're not complete idiots, and that you understand how trebuchets work. You know, in most cases. So even if it's a bent stick, which is the rare case, that's what it is. All right, like a catapult, for example. Sometimes a catapult is just bending a stick. You know, it's a really cheap version. But usually you want to be stretching some of the material. But the trebuchet is really it's just such an obvious, you know, lever. So you have a heavy, gigantic mass, like you could even have a ton, 1 ton of mass. And then you have your long stick, and you can put your projectile on the end. And all you do is you just, take a pulley system or some other system. You crank your wheel, turn it, you raise the weight slowly, okay, with your pulleys, okay, into this position. All right, and all you have is a stick and a heavy mass on one side and a really light mass, okay? So instead of it being equal momentums or whatever, however you want to think about it in terms of masses, the weight of this mass is going to be infinitesimal compared to the weight of this one on this side of the lever. So it's going to radically swing down because of gravity, and it's going to shoot the object. Now, if that's not a lever, lever doesn't have definition. You could put that in a dictionary as the definition of a lever. I mean, it's so obviously a lever. You got a little motion on one side, big giant motion on the other side. I mean, it's a lever. I mean, it's just a stupid, ignorant, dumb comment. All right. So, gaslighting. Anyway, a trebuchet is a lever. Imagine 3 mechanisms pulling down on the long side of a lever while the short end of the lever is pushing up the front end of a car. Yes, you're just using it in reverse. So you're, instead of creating a fast motion, you're creating a big pile of distance on one side, moving something a little tiny distance on the other side. So you can place a few blocks under the axis. Would you tell the mechanics to pull down the lever arm as quick as they can, or would you tell them to be careful when they lift the car? It's always an advantage in gravity to do it as quickly as possible. It's just a fact, okay? The quicker you go through gravity, the less gravity affects you. So if you want to do less work, pick up something quickly as possible, but you'll do less work. That's why weightlifters jerk the weight into a position where they can push it further. Is because it takes less energy to jerk it. All right, there is no velocity in the law of the lever. So this is just idiotic. Of course, it perfectly correlates to velocity. So there's absolutely no denying. I mean, nobody reasonable could absolutely deny that the distance perfectly correlates to velocity. Perfectly. The amount of velocity, the amount of movement in a unit of time, will be perfectly correlated to the distance. It's not proportional. It's perfectly correlated. Okay. So just too stupid. Let's see. There's no velocity in the law of the lever. So it's just a lie. I think it's quite obviously Archimedes understood that it's about velocity. All right. But a trebuchet uses velocity. So, I mean, it's just too silly. It can't help it. Every circumstance, a pulley, all of them, they use this circumstance. They can't escape the circumstance. That's the whole point. It's MV being conserved or exchanged. And that's all you can do. It's conserved, and all you can do is exchange it. Exchange a big M and a small v for a big V and a little m. That's all levers do. All right, the lever uses moment. So there's no moment. Where a trebuchet uses angular momentum. So again, there's no angular momentum. There's just momentum. There really is no angular momentum. There's just momentum. There's no such thing as angular. There's just how much distance and how much time. Period. Nothing else. But both are still not momentum. So that doesn't even make any sense. Where the trebuchet uses angular momentum, but both are still not momentum. So, I don't, how you can't make any sense out of that mush. Yes, John, levering and launching are 2 different things. So, in what respect are they different? Yeah, I'm sorry. There's no respect. Okay, it's just about masses moving. Period. It's motion. There's levers aren't famous for not doing anything. you know, they're famous for moving things. Okay, I don't know why he seems so convinced that the law of the lever. So, you. However, so he's using the word pertains to momentum. I don't know how you can see it any other way. I mean, if you're rational, what's the advantage being created? Oh, you're changing the MV to a more convenient one. All right, apart from his own imagination. A while ago, I asked him to show just one textbook. What the fuck does this have to do with anything? Or one statement from a teacher or professor who has ever stated this. Stated what? You're saying that a teacher doesn't teach in the textbook that the time derivative, that the amount of distance moved in a certain amount of time is how levers work? Sorry, I don't know what else they'd be doing. All right, anyway, obviously just tumbleweeds on his end. I don't know what that means. Tumbleweeds. So again, what other property does the thing have besides the conversion of the momentum? What else is it doing? I mean, how would you even distinguish it as a functional object outside of that function? Hope you're okay. Oh, I don't want to do this crap. So what is he got in here about China? A few bits have arrived today, but waiting on other parts from China now, as couldn't find UK seller with the sizes I needed. So whatever that is, what would it? What stupid experiment is he doing now? Goofy talked about Despard using his timer to measure the speed of the lever. Yeah, that's exactly in the video you didn't play. Okay, and it's not a trebuchet because we're not using it in gravity. But whatever. Okay, which reminded me that I have my electronic timer and light gates. Yeah, so why don't you use them too then? I don't know how good they are. This is also a case for Brozo, right? Because the simple argument is you could time it in lots of ways. So if you just put a little electrical contact, so your little piece of foil that it hits, and a little piece of foil that it hits. So you stretch the lever back, it hits the one piece of foil, then it hits the second piece of foil, and you could have sound with time in between. So you could use technically sound to or electrical. You could put that on a oscilloscope or on a I'm sure there's software that allows you to do that, to track the distance between two impulses, the time between them, and that'll tell you the same story. Because all you're saying is the time between those two hits is going to be the velocity of the lever. Too idiotic. These people are just so fucking stupid. Okay, but be careful with the experiment. Maybe it is an idea to build a wooden frame around it as a matter of shock absorber. So obviously that would be ridiculous. But whatever. Obviously you want the fulcrum as solid as possible so it reflects all energy. Because any energy it absorbs obviously has to come out of the experiment. Duh. Just like if you're going to bounce a ball bearing on a piece of steel, you want a piece of steel that isn't on a sponge. Yeah, you want something that can't be moved. Then the ball bounces the most. Something that can't be moved, can't be dented, then you get the most bounce. Put on something that can move, you get less bounce. Proven fact, frankly. Steve Mould proved it because when he does an experiment and he takes the air out, he didn't realize that he didn't put his glass, whatever, his evacuated thing on a hard surface. And he could actually hear because the whole fucking thing was bouncing. I'm not entirely sure how to use them and haven't up to now. They are used and came with no instructions, but I'm sure there will be some info online. Yes, I plan to build a framework for them to keep the distance exactly the same. Otherwise, there would be no point in employing them. So I don't know what that means, but and have the framework of the gates independent from the launch mechanism so they don't receive any shock. Whatever that means. I mean, it seems obvious you don't want the lever hitting the gates. The whole point is to have to break a light beam. So I don't know exactly how you're going to get a huge shock because you blocked a laser light. It's worth having a dabble with them to see how it works out, though, as well as the slow-mo, of course, LOL. So yes, that would be excellent. If you slow motion of the lever moving would be fantastic. Because then we can just put the two experiments right on top of each other. Just film the lever moving, and you just put the two on top of each other. And if the lever's moving exactly the same speed with the one mass twice the distance, well then my point is proven. Alright, if you block the detector for 2 seconds, you should read 2 seconds on the screen too. Whatever screen he's talking about. I will check that. It is calibrated before I do anything further with it. The only thing it needs to do is to test it to see if it do a pendulum and see if it reads the time the same for the swing of the pendulum. Each swing reads the same amount of time. I will check. Let's see. Okay, it's a good quality one, Eskio. I think the brand is, but I wasn't very well packaged when it arrived. Just hoping it works fine. Whatever. He's never going to get around to this. I mean, obviously, he's probably had this thing for a year and hasn't even been curious. To me, the rule of the lever is about moment. So he keeps saying this nonsense. Whatever a moment is. There's no such thing as a moment. I don't know why anybody would think a moment is a relevant thing. Here's a moment. Here, have some moment. You want some moment pie? What is moment? It's just such gloppy garbage baby talk. A force F works at a distance r. So again, it's more of this crap that they think somehow the force cares about any of this nonsense. When no, it's just moving mass of velocity. That's the only thing you can do in the universe. Bowling balls are a mass moving a velocity. They hit pins, and then the pins move masses moving velocities. And then the walls get hit, and they move masses with velocities. And that's all that ever fucking goddamn happens, you fucking idiotic retard. From the pivot of, or the bearing, when there is a moment on each side of the lever, for example, then the lever moves in a direction that is a larger moment points at. So that's just nonsense. As I demonstrated with the 4-to-1, the lever oscillates fine, and the only thing that's oscillating it is a little bit of mass switching sides. Professor Richard Feynman draws a lever on the blackboard and writes F times H next to each of the weights. So what video is this? I'd like to see that. Clearly the potential energy from the height. Yes, well that's in gravity, of course. He calls this the law of the lever. So, I mean, you know, obviously the distance in terms of, you know, if you're just going to drop a weight, okay, and you're not balancing a lever, this would be true. But it won't be true if you're balancing one. It simply won't be true because the two weights, if they're balanced weights, they're negated. And the only force you have is the weight of the lever itself. When you put it out of position, you've shifted some mass. As I pointed out in Gosling's moronic video where he made the lever a compound lever. And that's all he was doing, was changing how much the mass essentially weighed. In one position it weighed very little. In this position it weighed a lot more. It weighed more. Alright, enough of this. But just absolute ragged shit. I mean, there's a stupid title, a stupid premise, a stupid argument. I didn't change anything, didn't do any such thing. Let's see what this stupid description says. I don't know why I did that. Totally unnecessary. Thank you. Alright. Here we hear draft science change his argument yet again. So no argument was changed whatsoever. The instance he'll prove I changed nothing. There's nothing inconsistent with me defending the law of the lever, and it will absolutely work. It will prove itself because it's been proving itself for 2,000 years. Alright, and the instance of the lever to launch both probes was to ensure that both probes receive the same energy from the spring. The point is they have to be in explicitly correct positions to do that. Okay, as opposed to launching directly off a spring as you believe this to be a flawed method. It's not that I believe it, I argued and pointed out the obvious, that the spring is still moving after the object has left. The motion of the spring can't be for free. The spring can't move for free and give all of it. It can't give 100% of the energy to the object, and then the spring can't still be doing this. If the spring is still doing this, it didn't give all of its energy back. That's a duh physics argument. And the fact that I have to make arguments that stupid to these fuckers. You know, I mean, realistically, a 10-year-old kid could understand that argument. That if you say, look, the spring has energy in it, and you see it's not moving when I compress it, and then I compress it, it moves, it gets locked in a position, and now I'm going to release it. Now I release it, it's moving some other object. But then after the object leaves, the spring is still doing this. A 10-year-old could understand that it can't have possibly given all the energy back because the spring is still fucking moving. A 10-year-old could understand it. One of his, no doubt, retarded cousins could understand it. Let's see. You have argued that two mass at one distance on a lever and a one mass at two distance on a lever will cause the lever to move exactly the same velocity. And I said it in this video, and when I was drawing it, talking about dispar and how, hey, dispar, just use your timing gate, I explicitly defended that position, explicitly saying, yes, that's exactly what will happen. You lying scum. Alright, no more or less accounting to your claim, so no stealing of energy by the lever according to your argument here. So again, it's more nonsense. I didn't change anything in the argument. I just pointed out how it's just an absolute fact that if you move a mass to different positions on a lever, it'll move at different speed. Yeah, it'll happen. Alright, you also argue that when the lever moves slower, less energy is lost to the lever. Yes, a slower moving lever means it has less energy in it, which indicates that all the energy is going into the one mass at two distance as the lever in this case moves slower. So again, I'm saying if you put a mass further out than the 2-to-1 distance, the lever itself will in fact move slower to produce twice the velocity. It's just a fact. Alright, so we did the rest. Alright. Oh, they're just such liars. Oh, God. They can't do an honest experiment. They can't make an honest statement. And in defense of what? They're defending the scientific method. And their argument is, let's not bother with any of that method crap. Let's not bother with rules. Let's not bother with simple arguments like they should do the experiments. Right? These are all people who don't think the Eddington experiment should be done from space. They don't think any of these fundamental laws should be tested. They shouldn't crash cars, shouldn't crash wooden blocks, shouldn't do ballistic pendulum experiments and try to get something more than the momentum, just 1% of the kinetic energy more than the momentum, just to prove kinetic energy is real. They should be able to collect some of it. They shouldn't have to lose 99.94% of it. I mean, the fact that they can't even collect 1% of the kinetic energy just makes this such a ludicrous argument. You know, they really think that somehow you can change how much force a spring has because I can just shoot a light object and create more kinetic energy. You know, I can put a lighter bullet in a gun and make the gunpowder have more energy. I not only get less recoil, I get more bullet. I get more kinetic energy into the bullet. A bigger, huger differential in the amount of kinetic energy in the recoil versus the kinetic energy in the bullet. Same momentum, but again, I can just change how much energy the gunpowder can produce by just making the bullets lighter and lighter. Bullshit, I can. It's nonsense. It's garbage. It's so obviously wrong as a description of reality. And yet these morons defend it. Fuck. It is a planet of imbeciles, frankly. This isn't even challenging logical arguments. And they can't counter-argument anything I say. They have to lie about what he played the video and he just lied about what I'm saying in the video. So I didn't change anything.